Rodgers, couple of things. Number one, he does talk about going back to Pittsburgh and where that stands. But before we jump into that, we're going to talk about the level of strange, bizarre, I use that word bizarre, entitlement that Emmanuel Acho, who used to work for Fox Sports and got canned and run out the door, I think over that Joey Taylor mess.
That level of anger you just heard, that's not manufactured outrage. That's genuine frustration from someone who just watched a media personality cross a line that shouldn't exist. Emmanuel Acho went on his platform and called Aaron Rodgers bizarre for wanting to keep his marriage private. Not just questioned it, called it bizarre, and the internet absolutely destroyed him for it.
She didn't want herself and all their business out in public. And Aaron Rodgers talks about that. And it pisses Emmanuel Acho off. That he's like, I feel like, I mean, it's crazy. Why do you think this is bizarre? What, the dude doesn't have the right to keep his marriage private if he wants to? I mean, he's got the right to make a decision later in life. I don't want to live that celebrity bullshit.
Listen to what Rodgers actually said on the Pat McAfee show. His wife didn't sign up to be a celebrity. She didn't want the social media scrutiny. She married him because she loves him, not because she wanted to be tabloid fodder. That's it. That's the entire controversy. A man wants to protect his wife's privacy, and somehow that became a problem for Emmanuel Acho. This connects to something we see constantly in sports media, especially in the WNBA. This idea that public figures owe us access to every corner of their lives, that privacy itself is somehow suspicious.
And I was shocked. I was like, really, Emmanuel Acho? I was like, good God. I can't stand the media. I really can't.
And I think whenever you come out and speak about this for her, it feels like you're trying to support her as well, saying, hey, like,
she didn't sign up for this bullshit, you know? She signed up because she loves me and she supports me and she wants to spend the rest of our lives together and start a family together. She didn't sign up to be out.
Watch Rodgers explain this again. He lived the celebrity relationship life with Olivia Munn. He experienced what it's like when every date, every argument, every vacation becomes content for entertainment websites. And he's saying clearly, I didn't like it. I'm out of it. I don't want to be back in it. That's not bizarre. That's called learning from experience and making different choices. But Emmanuel Acho can't accept that answer. And here's where it gets really telling about media entitlement.
Agreed. I don't get it. I think that's a very lucid take from Aaron Rodgers. I do. Emmanuel Acho is mad because Aaron Rodgers wants to keep his private life private. The unadulterated nerve of this motherfucker. I mean, really.
I hate when Aaron Rodgers sounds shocked by things that are common sense. You are a public figure. When you are a public figure, people care about who you are in relationship with. Rodgers, why you act like people trying to figure out your mystery wife is bizarre? Your behavior with this mystery person is bizarre.
Acho's actual argument is wild when you break it down. He says Rodgers is a public figure, therefore people care about his relationships. Therefore keeping his marriage private is bizarre behavior. Follow that logic. You're famous, so you forfeit the right to privacy. And if you try to maintain boundaries, you're the weird one. That's not journalism, that's entitlement. And the response Acho got should surprise exactly no one. The comments section became a masterclass in how out of touch this take really was.
Videos, probably more. I think, you know, it's a lot. I don't want my private life out there. I mean, really? I mean, it's crazy. He got crushed over this. Stop it. You're talking about it and acting like this is more bizarre. He's a private person, always has been. Move on. This is the same guy that judges Jalen Hurts' social skills at a distance. You don't know his relationship with that woman. Shut up. He's getting crushed. I watched the Aaron Rodgers interview on this. Sorry, Emmanuel Acho, but you're wrong here.
People started pulling receipts immediately. Lamar Jackson has 2 kids, and most fans had no idea he was even in a serious relationship. Kerry Washington was married for 11 years before doing her first joint interview with her husband. Nnamdi Asomugha, her husband, kept their entire relationship out of the spotlight. Nobody called that bizarre, and then someone brought up the Joy Taylor situation. Remember why Emmanuel Acho left Fox Sports? There were rumors about workplace relationships and uncomfortable dynamics. Suddenly his obsession with other people's private lives hits different, doesn't it?
I mean, that's strange to me. This is what happens when you keep your life, as it should be, personal. Most can't do this. Another man worried about what another man does privately. That is exactly it. That's exactly, he getting crushed. I mean, wow. This is so out of touch. Bro, not everything is going to be prompted for your fucking podcast gang. Your wild gang.
The comments kept rolling in. Another man worried about another man's private life. This is what happens when you keep your life personal, like it should be. Tell us about Joy Taylor, Emmanuel. Each one cutting deeper because they're all pointing at the same hypocrisy. You want to talk about other people's boundaries while your own professional history includes questions about crossed boundaries. That's a problem, and it reveals something crucial about how sports media operates today.
I mean, yeah. Seriously. I was like, the level of weird entitlement from Emmanuel Acho to think that he deserves to know what Aaron Rodgers got going on in his personal life.
Here's what really bothers people about takes like Acho's. It's not that he asked about Rodgers' marriage. It's that he framed the desire for privacy as a character flaw, as something abnormal that requires explanation and justification. Think about what that implies for WNBA players. For women athletes who already deal with invasive questions about their personal lives, their relationships, their plans for families. If a male quarterback can't keep his marriage private without being called bizarre, what chance do women athletes have?
They didn't bring him in. Don't believe me? The GM lost his job over it. I still think the Vikings could be at play laying in the weeds on this Aaron Rodgers thing. If you ask me, would you want Kyler Murray or Aaron Rodgers for a year? I'd be like Aaron Rodgers. With Hawkinson and Addison and Justin Jefferson, yeah, Aaron Rodgers. I'm just throwing that out there. Man, I think it's fudging weird. I guess I should have just said the word. I done said it 3 times. I apologize, folks. This one got me riled up. I was like, how can you call a man bizarre for wanting to keep his business in check?
The host's final point lands perfectly. You don't hate the media enough, and he's right. Not because all media is bad, but because this specific brand of entitled, invasive, boundary-crossing media has become so normalized that we forget how weird it actually is. Aaron Rodgers doesn't owe Emmanuel Acho a wedding announcement. He doesn't owe him photos. He doesn't owe him access to his wife. He doesn't owe him an explanation for why he values privacy. The fact that Acho thinks he does, that's the bizarre part. Let's break down why this matters beyond just one bad take from one media personality. This connects to a much larger pattern in sports media, and it affects how we cover athletes across every league. Emmanuel Acho's argument rests on a premise that's become dangerously common. Public figure equals public property. You chose to be famous, therefore you chose to surrender privacy. But that's a false equivalence. Rodgers chose to play professional football. He didn't choose to have his marriage dissected on sports talk shows. This distinction matters enormously in the WNBA, where players face constant pressure to be accessible, relatable, and marketable. Caitlin Clark deals with this every single day. The scrutiny of her relationships, her friendships, her interactions with teammates. The assumption that because she's the face of women's basketball, every aspect of her life is fair game for content. Watch how Acho frames his criticism. He says Rodgers' behavior with his mystery wife is bizarre. Mystery wife. As if the fact that we don't know everything about her makes her mysterious rather than just private. That language choice reveals the assumption we deserve to know, and if you won't tell us, you're being weird and secretive. Compare that to how Kerry Washington and Nnamdi Asomugha handled their relationship. 11 years of marriage before their first joint interview. Nobody called them bizarre. Nobody questioned their mental health. Nobody suggested there was something wrong with their relationship because they didn't parade it in front of cameras. The difference? Expectations. We've been conditioned to expect athletes to give us everything. And when they don't, media personalities like Acho act offended, as if a boundary is an insult rather than a right. Here's what makes this particularly relevant right now. The WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth. More attention, more money, more media coverage than ever before. And with that growth comes increased pressure on players to be constantly available, constantly performing, constantly feeding the content machine. Look at what happened with Angel Reese's podcast. She's creating her own media platform, controlling her own narrative. That's smart, but it also means she's expected to address every controversy, every rumor, every speculation in real time. The boundary between her professional life and personal life gets thinner every week. Or consider the coverage of Brittany Griner after her release from Russia. Media outlets wanted every detail of her ordeal, her recovery, her mental state. When she set boundaries about what she would and wouldn't discuss, some reporters acted like she was being difficult rather than traumatized. This is the same entitlement Acho is displaying. The belief that access is owed rather than earned, that privacy is suspicious rather than healthy, that boundaries are obstacles rather than rights. The social media response to Acho's take tells you everything you need to know about how out of step he is with reality. People aren't just disagreeing with him, they're mocking him, they're bringing up his own history. They're pointing out the hypocrisy of someone with rumored workplace relationship issues, lecturing others about their private lives. One comment nailed it. You're such a feminine-ass bitch. Crude? Absolutely. But it captures the frustration people feel when media personalities act like scorned gossips rather than professional journalists. Acho isn't asking legitimate questions about Rodgers' football future. He's mad that he doesn't get to know about Rodgers' wife. And here's the thing about beat reporters and media personalities in both the NFL and WNBA. The good ones understand the difference between public interest and public curiosity. Public interest. How is Rodgers' marriage affecting his decision about returning to football? Public curiosity. Who is his wife and why won't he show us pictures? One is journalism, the other is gossip. And when you dress up gossip as journalism, you get takes like Acho's. Think about the position this puts athletes in. If you date someone famous, you're accused of seeking attention. If you date someone private, you're accused of being secretive. If you share your relationship on social media, you're accused of making it a distraction. If you don't share it, you're accused of being bizarre. There's no winning. The only solution is to do exactly what Rodgers is doing, set a boundary and refuse to justify it. His wife doesn't want to be in the spotlight, period. That's the entire explanation required. But Acho can't accept that, because accepting it means acknowledging that athletes have the right to say no. And if athletes can say no to questions about their marriages, maybe they can say no to other invasive questions. Maybe they can push back on other boundary violations. Maybe they can reclaim some control over their own narratives. That terrifies a certain type of media personality, the kind who built their career on access and insider information. The kind who measure their value by how much private information they can extract and publicize. Rodgers setting boundaries threatens that entire model. Watch that initial Pat McAfee interview again. Rodgers isn't defensive, he's not angry, he's just matter of fact. This is my boundary. Respect it or don't, but I'm not changing it. That confidence comes from knowing he doesn't need to justify his choices to Emmanuel Acho or anyone else. Now compare that to how WNBA players often have to navigate these situations. They can't always be that blunt because they're still building the league, still fighting for respect, still proving they deserve coverage at all. So they have to be more diplomatic, more accommodating, more willing to give access even when it makes them uncomfortable. That's not fair. But it's reality, and it's why takes like Acho's are particularly damaging in the WNBA context. They reinforce the idea that athletes owe us access, that privacy is a privilege rather than a right, that boundaries are negotiable rather than absolute. So here's the question this all raises. Was Emmanuel Acho's take just a bad moment, or does it represent something deeper about how sports media views athletes? Based on the response, based on the pattern of similar takes from other personalities, based on how this connects to larger issues of access and entitlement, I'd argue it's the latter. This isn't about one bad take, it's about a media culture that's forgotten the difference between covering athletes and owning them, between reporting on their professional lives and demanding access to their personal ones, between journalism and gossip. Aaron Rodgers drew a line. Emmanuel Acho got mad about it, and the internet reminded Acho that he's not entitled to cross that line just because he has a microphone. That's the story. And it's a story that matters for every athlete in every league who's trying to maintain some semblance of privacy in an increasingly invasive media landscape. If you were in Rodgers' position, would you do anything differently? Would you give media personalities like Acho the access they're demanding? Or would you hold that boundary even tighter after seeing this response? Let me know in the comments, because this dynamic isn't going away. It's only getting more intense as sports media becomes more desperate for content, and athletes become more protective of their personal lives.